I just like the emphasizing the objectness of books.
So the things you brought today, you have a super wide variety. Are these things you've had for a long time? Are these recent collections?
So probably the oldest thing I have here is this Margaret Kilgallen book.
Okay.
Which I got a couple years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. She's like my favorite artist.
Cool.
So I really just get everything that I can from her. And then a lot of this stuff is new because I work at a big bookstore, so every day I come home with new stuff.
That's what's up. Yeah. I mean, if you love books, working in a bookstore is certainly an advantage.
Yes, totally.
What type of art does Margaret make? I'm not familiar.
So Margaret was around from the early 90s to like 2001 is when she died. And she does a lot of work that's sort of similar to sign painting.
Oh, yeah.
That's
And
beautiful.
It's a lot of, from what I could tell from the videos of her and stuff, she would paint things separately and then sort of start to collage them together. But I think what she's really well known for is her installation work, which there's some pictures in here somewhere.
When was she active?
Like the very beginning of the 90s, I think, right up until
Okay.
2001.
Wow, I can definitely see her work inspiring stuff from like Barry McGee.
I was thinking the same thing.
They were
Yeah.
married, that's why.
Oh, they were married.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Okay.
So this was like her studio that she had somewhere, and then these are more studio pics, and then there's probably some installation work in the back here. Oh, here we go. So they painted I forget which museum it was.
This makes so much sense now.
Her and Barry McGee painted the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, like their
2000.
parking garage.
Cool.
Awesome.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
they just went in and just blew
Those
up the
are
whole place.
fantastic.
That rules.
Yeah. And then this is one of her installations where she would do this big structure out of cut up things that she did. So she'd paint a long word and then chop it up into a million pieces and then reassemble it into these things.
Very cool.
That's super cool. This is really neat, kind of like source material for so many things. We were just talking about how certain things, especially in graffiti, kind of look dated to a certain time period. And this is like, I feel like recognizably of a time, but not dated, because this is the source material. This is like the firmament, whereas you could see so many artists that were maybe inspired by her work. That's the dated stuff. It's maybe not authentic or it's not sincere or something.
There is a kind of classic quality to it. I think whenever you're working with typography, you can get to that place more easily, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe. Depends on the type, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if
typeface.
it's Comic Sans, you're probably not going to win many friends.
Comic Sans is having a
resurgence.
renaissance.
Yeah.
And her, like, one of her first jobs in San Francisco was she worked at a book conservatory inside of a library.
Oh,
so
cool.
she was working with a lot of, like hand-painted books and stuff like that, like manuscripts and stuff.
That's very cool.
So she would use a lot of that in her typography and in some of these things, like these trees, which would be used as supplementary elements when you're doing, like, a Bible when they painted the whole thing by hand, you know?
Oh, wow, cool.
That's
and
awesome.
some skateboard designs, too.
Yeah. Toy Machine actually just, like, re-released these,
Nice.
I think last year. It's pretty cool. But
Cool.
she
Do you
also
skate?
did... I did when I was in high school, but I haven't skated that much since. Now I just ride my bike everywhere.
Yeah, because I know some of the cartoons. Doesn't Ashton skate? Some of the cartoonists, I think, in New York.
Jasper
skates.
does.
Or Jasper.
Yeah, Jasper
Yeah.
skates.
I'm too fragile to skate.
I liked hanging out with people who skated, I guess in high school and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
and I love skate videos. Like,
For sure.
skate videos had such an impact on, I think, like, how I think about structuring anything. It's just like, this is the best little bits of all the things.
Well, I always liked hanging out with the skaters, and the vibe is cool, and it is very DIY.
Yeah.
Like, all those videos are just like, do the thing until it works.
Yeah.
Just smash at the trick until you land it, which I appreciate that spirit.
And you only ever see, it's a reminder too that you only ever see the fruits of those labors. You know, like for every 3-second trick, that could be hours or days or weeks.
Of
worth
course.
practicing.
The determination is fantastic. I always admired that.
Similar, I guess, to visual art too. Like when
Yeah.
you see a drawing, it's like, what's that Picasso thing where he's like, someone was like, you just sold that drawing for whatever, it took you 5 seconds. He's like, no, it took my whole life.
Yeah.
Like that little drawing is just the product of so much experience.
Yeah. And I think skateboarding is nice too because it's like, it's sort of paradigm shifting the way you view your surroundings. Like you're not viewing it like, oh, that's a stair. Oh, that's a bump in the ground. You're viewing it as like, oh, this is like something that I can do something with.
Yeah, interactive environment.
Yeah.
And it invites you into the space.
Yeah,
in a different
totally.
way. That's cool. Nice. This stuff is great. I
Yeah.
feel like maybe I've seen stuff like this around and not even realize it was the same person.
Yeah, she's great. There's like so much. There's a bunch of, you know that series Art 21?
Yeah, I love Art
Yeah,
21.
like in the first season, there's an episode with her and Barry McGee in it, and I've seen that God,
Sweet.
Nice.
like 50 times.
That's
I feel
great.
like I've watched them.
I sometimes show those to my students, or parts of them to my students.
Yeah.
Just to put a face to the artist is like, especially for a living artist, a nice reminder that these are people you can just go look up videos about them.
Totally.
Yeah.
What's it? There's like an essay in the front or something.
Yeah, there's a bunch of essays.
Cool.
They have like her artist statement, which is really cool. I think the Art 21, like some of the stuff she was saying in there is in here too.
Awesome.
But a lot of the stuff is really cool too because she was really into like freight train graffiti,
Oh, neat.
like Barry
That's
McGee
cool.
was. So they would go and just bring like their wax pens or whatever and draw.
Yeah.
That's great. I wonder what is the first line of her artist statement, because I always think like artist statements
It's
can
a
be
make or break moment.
can be so difficult to write. I
Yeah.
think artists, you know, so it's like as an artist statement, I think it's really interesting how people start them.
Yeah.
So
My artwork is influenced by my day job of making and repairing books, my past education in letterpress printing, and my observation of present-day forms of communication such as lettering, signs, and markings.
yeah, books and letter forms have been the basis of the transmission of knowledge and a mode of communication for several thousand years. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. I like
too
that.
purple.
Yeah, I like
Not
it.
too,
It's really direct.
not too
It's like
forward.
speaks right to the experience
Totally.
and like the generative thrust of the work, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, that's why I love her so much.
Pretty
She's not
honest.
super superfluous. Like she's pretty straight to the point.
I
she talks
can
about
appreciate that.
graffiti and hobo train markings and stuff like that down at the bottom.
Very chill.
I guess we should talk briefly, George, sorry, we kind of jumped ahead here. We should talk briefly about, I guess, what you're working on, or like what kinds of things, like how do these kinds of things tie into maybe like, not directly, but just kind of like, what are you working on? Are you having projects like you're going on right now?
When I was still in school, I learned about Margaret first, and I was taking a bunch of painting classes. And I really liked how she tied in like found objects into her artwork, and how it wasn't about making something from scratch, it's about using what's around you. Like a lot of her paintings, she'll do the wood, and the wood is just found scraps of wood that she found on the street, or she'll use like the first page of a book or something, or she'll use something that she's had in her studio for a long time. And that's sort of how I like to work with books too. I like to take things as they are and have them come to me rather than have to make every single part of it. In the beginning, when I was first starting, I would want to make every single thing, but then slowly I wanted to let more things that were out of my control come in. And that's something that I take from her. And also when I'm doing paintings, I like to use found wood as well.
Neat. So is that kind of where the anthology, so you kind of maybe lean toward anthology because it allows to loosen up for the control a little bit?
Yeah. Also, I like presenting my friends' work in like the best possible way, or the way that I think is the best. So that's why I like the anthology. I like taking things and then not changing them too much, but trying to incorporate them into a larger picture.
Cool.
Yeah.
Those books are beautiful too. Like one of the early things, we looked at your work pretty early on in the channel, and I think we were really excited by just like the use of different papers,
Yeah.
the assemblage of it.
Just for reference. I
We
know
were
we've talked about this
really
before.
excited by that work, and it's to this day still it just looks and feels amazing. It's such a pleasure to read one of your books.
Thank you.
And this one in particular I really like because it has that kind of assembled found object quality
Yeah.
to it, which I think is maybe similar to what you were just mentioning. Where do you source this kind of stuff, or maybe you don't have to give away the secrets or whatever? But
Well,
is
I
this-
mean, there's not much of a secret. Like, I'm very internet focused when it comes to making work. Like, there's so many different outlets for public domain work, or just stuff that I find. Like, I could go through and just point out, like, this is from a Monsters in Filmland magazine. This is from some manga anthology. There's a bunch of other stuff too. Like, this is from a field guide about reptiles. This is also from that monster
That's
thing.
great. There's something so like I've looked at this a lot. This particular thing just kind of it feels internet adjacent, I guess, but there's something so nice about it's still contained within these two kind of borders. Like the reason I haven't taken it apart like I was told to is because I just like handling it and I like holding it. And the internet is always like, I find myself if I'm scrolling through stuff, even if I'm looking at it, I'm kind of inspired by it. I know there's an infinite amount of other stuff out there, and I know that I could be. It limits the amount of time I spend on any one thing, but because I know that there's a finite amount of stuff in this bound version of that kind of thing, I linger on it way longer, and I end up absorbing this way more than I would if I just found all this stuff on the web or something. It's just like a really cool way to package this.
Yeah. And I really like the giving somebody something and then having them be confronted with the objects. Like this one has a pretty lengthy explanation in the front, but from what I've seen, like most people kind of skip over that and then sort of try and digest the book by themselves. And there's no right way to do it. Like I think that's great to try and like figure it out, you know? And I just like the emphasizing the objectness of books. One of my professors in school was really gung-ho about that. Like when he was in school, he took a bunch of books and then started putting screw-in wheels on them, you know, like on the bottom of the cart.
Nice.
So it's no longer a book with words in it. It's now a block. It's an object that you have to confront. And I like to do that, but I also like to keep the informationness of books inside.
Cool. So did you go to SVA? Is that
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
And when you talk about copyright free or free usage work, this book that you have here kind of jumps out at me. I'm drawn to this like engraving style of the image they chose for the cover, and specifically this like menagerie of different animals really speaks to me. I've done something similar recently, and I really like this a lot.
Yeah.
I remember seeing these in the libraries, and as a kid, just being like poring over these like image digests.
I loved like maximalist drawing even as like a little kid. Did you read Animalia? Have you ever seen Animalia?
Oh yeah.
It's like it's an alphabet book, but every spread is like super dense, detailed drawing. I used to have a copy of it.
I had a copy. I gave it to my niece.
Everything in the spread starts with A, so it's like alligators, apples, whatever. And
then
the next spread is like all these things. It's like how many things that start with B, how many things that start with C, but it's this like hyper dense.
Oh man, those were so fun as a kid. Like getting lost in a book like that. What a great thing.
And I just think it doesn't work on the internet. You don't that experience is not the same because there's always more. Like you can take your time on a spread in a book in a way that like the internet's constantly forcing you out of it instead of inviting you into it.
I dream of a time when we all just like consciously agree that everything digital and internet just stinks. We're all just like
not everything though.
I know. I'm painting with a broad brush, but I'm saying like we all just look at our phones and go, "This stinks."
Well,
and just like put it down and never to be picked up again.
So special about something like this is it's like curatorial.
Yes,
it's pulling things that are interesting, and it's pulling from the infinite vastness of the junkyard of the internet. Like you can still find cool shit in a junkyard.
Oh yeah,
it's still a junkyard, but like, you can find cool shit in there, and then to curate it down into objects, I think is just like a really kind of admirable pursuit.
No, it's very cool.
Yeah, one of my favorite Sammy Harkin quotes is he's talking about the internet. He's like, "Well, you know, you get what you paid for. You know, you didn't pay anything. You gotta look for stuff."
That's great.
That is great. So wait, let's check out this book.
Well, let me talk about this one first.
Okay, yeah, sure.
These are the sort of the reasons that I brought that book.
Cool.
So this is the last Whole Earth catalog,
Whoa.
and the Whole Earth catalog was a big, like a self-starter, self-reliant, like 60s, 70s, like let's build your own geodesic dome. Let's teach you how to
cool.
Let's teach you how to do plumbing in your
or
house.
make a teepee
I've
or
never
a
seen
log
this
cabin. I've never seen this either.
I've never heard of this before.
And
This
what
is
this is pretty
fascinating.
much is like somebody's book list or like 10 people's book list, and then in each part you can go and so like at the
this
bottom
is amazing.
it says like Japanese houses, and this is in the shelter section, design consideration, blah blah blah.
Right, so it almost has like a technical manual feel,
Yeah.
but it also has like a catalog feel
Yeah,
to it.
so you could order from the Whole Earth catalog. So you would send to this catalog their mailing address, and then they would send you the book back.
Oh my god, I love
It's like
this.
the Sears robot catalog for survival.
I want one of
Exactly, yeah.
I'm gonna try to find one of these before we air this episode. What is this like a out of print book? Obviously, it's out of print. But
Yeah, it's
like,
out of print.
Is it worth like $1 million or something?
Some people price it like crazy, but where's the printing? It says somewhere in here how many copies they printed, and it's like 1 million. So
Okay, so
they're out there.
They're out
yeah,
there.
they're out there totally. And there's the Whole Earth catalog, which is the most expensive one. There's the
This is so
last
cool.
Whole Earth catalog, which is like this one.
Sure.
And then there's like, I think it's called the Next Whole Earth Catalog. So they just kept going. And also, there's a website called the Whole Earth Index, and they just digitized everything.
Oh, wow.
So this book is completely on there, and then their magazines are on there as well.
So tons of illustrations in here, too.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about this one, because this has a lot of public domain illustration and stuff like that mixed within it. Like this.
So
These
cool.
amazing diagrams and stuff.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, it has like an almanac vibe.
Yeah, and it's just like a great object. Like, oh, I want to learn about needlepoint or whatever. It's like, oh, here's a book that this person recommended. And I think that in the timeline that we're in right now, like something like this is a little bit obsolete, because if you really want to focus on something, there's thousands of internet resources that you can find. You can find your favorite person. But I think with this is what something I was trying to do with this was to have that like catalog or like infinite web type of thing, but instead of having central hubs like the Whole Earth Catalog, you have individual terminals where people are putting that out, but they're putting out their knowledge and their information into something that's a little bit smaller and more affordable.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I can definitely see the conversation that this, has created in your work. It's really fantastic.
It's great, like handwritten calligraphy, and like there's the variety of this is really attractive.
It's a very cool object, yeah.
I mean, it's just an amazing thing. Like, I don't remember where I found this one. I didn't get it that long ago. Oh, you know what? I think I got this at Troubled Sleep. Have you guys been there?
No, what is Troubled Sleep?
Troubled Sleep is like my favorite bookstore. It's in Park Slope. Have you guys ever met Holden?
Holden.
I think so.
He's friends with a few. He's got long hair,
Yeah,
glasses.
I think I've met Holden.
Yeah, he works there. So I started going there, and they just
Awesome.
have like great ephemera and great oversized stuff.
Is that affiliated with Troy Swain?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's
Oh, okay, yeah. Human Relations.
Human Relations, Codex, and Troubled Sleep are like the three.
Cool. Okay.
Got it.
I haven't been to Troy. I've been to the other two. I haven't been to Troubled
Yeah,
Sleep.
Troy's great.
Yeah,
Troy's awesome. Shout out to Troy.
Yeah,
you guys
shouts to
know
Troy.
Aaron Comet Bus?
Yeah.
Yeah, he owns Troubled Sleep.
Oh,
That's
cool.
his
I mean, I don't know him personally, but I know the, the Comet Bus scene, yeah.
Yeah. So that book's great. Like,
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
I love
Yeah, that's
this.
amazing.
So
we could
cool.
probably do a whole episode on this.
Yeah,
but,
totally.
Yeah, right.
That's really
For
cool.
reals.
it covers everything too. It covers like shelter, doing your plumbing, doing your electricity, and then it covers like games and like art reference books and
That's
stuff like
amazing.
that. It's an odd thing.
That's
So
great. Have you gone any further with this? Have you seen something where you're like, I want to try that, or I want to like pursue that or something? Like, has that been an entry point for anything? Or?
yeah, recently I've gotten really into geology and botany. So I have two of the books that are in here for geology just because I found them at work. So
Cool.
I was like, oh, fuck
Amazing.
yeah, I'll get that.
Yeah,
That's
hell yeah.
great.
So yeah.
I love hearing about cartoonists like non-drawing related interests or like
Yeah,
non-drawing
yeah.
related pursuits or whatever.
I was just talking about how we were talking earlier about how I love to arrange flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
you said
just-
it's like painting, which I think is
it-
actually really astute.
It reminds me of painting.
Yeah. Color placement, color juxtaposition.
So this is another book that I got. This one was broken, so I got it for like $1. But this book I really like. It uses public domain illustration like amazingly.
That's so cool.
Lots of just good pictures of plants and stuff, cactus.
It makes sense now why you responded to those tree drawings that I was doing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And this and like the Whole Earth Catalog is something that I want to insert into the next clamp a lot. Like I was writing a letter to somebody and I was like, oh, I want it to be like the last Whole Earth Catalog, like Paper Rodeo, and then something else that I don't know yet.
Very cool.
Yeah. So all this sort of information is just really interesting, and
Yeah, this is beautiful. I love these drawings.
all of this is public
They're like
domain.
etchings or
So when
whatever.
you say working it into clamp, do you mean like using the illustrations or using the spirit of the book, or like is your plan to pull specifically from this, or to kind of use it as a source text or something?
I haven't really thought about it. I've thought about using the idea of pulling in books and having reading lists for the next clamp, which is from the Whole Earth Catalog.
Cool.
And I've wanted to do, I think there's something in here, have like the U.S. Department of Agriculture, like where you plant stuff and what zone you're in and what grows in your area. Just like
I love that.
broad information like that. Here we go, like average annual precipitation in terms of inches.
And something that American food distribution does not care at all about anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I just think people,
Oh, these are amazing, these drawings. They're
Yeah.
so cool.
I think people would be interested in these things. They just don't have a focal point that they can grab onto, something that doesn't have all the information is something like this, but something that doesn't have too little information and sort of talks down to you. I just think a good, and that goes back to like the terminal and central hub that I was saying before. I think individual terminals help people branch out into other things and maybe find things that are related to that or that are adjacent but not connected directly.
Yeah, and I think we're at a point in time with the internet is like too much.
Yeah.
And it almost becomes like, it's information overload, but I keep calling it like the tutorial industrial complex, where like when you find something you're interested in, I've done this before with music too. Like you end up spending hundreds of hours watching people demonstrate things without actually making anything.
Right.
Exactly.
And the doing is the most important part.
Yeah,
so like
sure.
something that is, I think like you said, like limited enough to get started, but it's not everything to the point where you can kind of watch it and scratch the itch. Like it has to be inviting enough for you to actually participate in it.
Totally. And there's like lots of...
This is great.
Yeah.
Vegetables.
And I really like this too. Like it's like vernacular graphic design. It's not something that somebody knows the grid system, somebody knows this, somebody knows that.
Right.
There's no rules.
Yeah. And I was reading in another book, which I actually brought with me. Inside of this book, they talk about the Whole Earth Catalog a lot. And this is about hippies and modernist utopian people like Le Corbusier, Buckminster Fuller, stuff like that, mixing in with people from the Whole Earth Catalog like Stuart Brand and people like that.
Very cool.
And there's a whole essay in here about the Whole Earth Catalog and that kind of graphic design.
So are these books like 60s era? Is that what we're...
Well, this one's from...
72 updated
Yeah.
on this one.
Whole Earth Catalog 72. The Gardener's Catalog is, I believe it's probably 70s as well.
Okay.
But this one talks a lot about how the general graphic design, like, I don't know, cabal, whatever the fuck.
The intelligentsia.
Yeah, they really hated the Whole Earth Catalog. Well, they didn't, like, hate it, but it was never recognized for anything. It was seen as sort of sloppy and, like...
You mean for awards or whatever?
Yeah, not even awards, but just they never talk about it in any sort of design history book. Even today, like, we got a new design book that's, like, Graphic Greats or whatever the fuck it's called. And it's from Phaedon, one of the big publishers, and they don't bring up any of this stuff. They don't bring up any of these sort of DIY, like, figure it out yourself kind of things. Like,
yeah, that's interesting. I went to MICA and I was a graphic design major. That's what I did. I realized halfway through I didn't really want to do design, but I'm glad I did. They were like, just mix up the illustration and design class will be fine. But I had the same experience. Like, I was not exposed to anything like this. It was like, here's contemporary designers and here's how it's done. It was very rule-based, which is part of why I didn't like doing it. And, some of our textbooks were written by our faculty, which can be hit or miss, but it's like, you had to go, it was cool because it was a hub and I found my own terminals from there, but like, the stuff they were presenting us with was nothing like this, and you had to kind of put that extra effort in to try to track stuff down. But I've never heard of any of this stuff before. This is awesome.
So this covers a large area, right? Like,
so,
this is all over the place.
It doesn't just cover the graphic design. It covers, like, architecture, graphic design, people that were doing light shows.
Yeah.
A lot of the
illustration.
Cool. Yeah. Illustration.
Photography, wow.
There's a little section here on one of the main Black Panther guys that was illustrating a lot of those magazines. Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's just great. It's like a cool thing. And the way this book is laid out is really cool because it has essays in the front. The essays cite these illustrations back here if you want to see stuff in color. And then in the back, they sort of focus on individuals and this is cool too. It's just like a tipped-in magazine thing.
Very cool.
That's like a reproduction or maybe an actual...
Yeah, it's a reproduction of one issue of, I think it's called Progressive Architecture.
It looks like it was even printed in the same way.
Yeah, here you go.
That's cool. Offset on gloss.
Yeah, glossy paper. There's this one guy, Ken Isaac, that I really like, and he was really interested in making your own living spaces, which is something like this. It's simple construction to make your house three-dimensional instead of two-dimensional. So
oh, cool.
Are you familiar with Josh Citarella?
I don't think so.
A current, a working artist now, and he does similar things where it's like how to live in your Tesla, And you like he like completely, it's like a cutaway, you know, and it shows every square inch like mapped out. So there's like a place where you're growing vegetables in there, like where you sleep, like water filtration, like all that.
That's great.
He does a lot of that cool like living space art. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're totally fine.
I like the idea that you spend, you know, if you have $80,000 and no home, you use it to buy a Tesla.
yeah, totally. Well, I think his whole take is like techno dystopia.
Yeah,
It's like
I mean, it's
like,
funny. It's a great, it's a really interesting comment.
There's a lot of humor in his work, but yeah, definitely worth checking out. Josh Citterell.
There's lots of YouTube channels that I really like that sort of focus on one thing and they do it all the way to the nth degree. Like there's this YouTuber that I can't think of his name right now, but he just does urban camping all the time. It doesn't have to be in the city either, but like one he'll do in a parking garage, and then another one he'll be like, oh, I'm camping behind this billboard.
That's gotta be tough. Man.
Yeah. I mean, he seems to like it. He's still making videos. He seems very happy when he's doing it.
This is what, like, the internet's not a total dump. Like,
Where
there's gold to be found. You
Totally.
You gotta seek it out.
Where I'm from, outside of Chicago, there's a guy who's lived in a tent outside of a mobile station for the past, like, probably 15 years, maybe longer, 20 years in the same. He's moved a couple times because the people will destroy his encampment.
Yeah.
And it's like, this guy just wants to live
Totally.
unbothered, unfettered, off the grid. Like, leave him alone. Let him live in a tent. There's been countless stories, but it's like, it's in a very well-to-do suburb, so they like cannot stand it. It like breaks their brain that someone wouldn't live in their like McMansion, you know?
Voluntarily.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there's the whole Earth Gallery there.
Yeah. So this is a big section. This one's from the one that we were just looking at, I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
This is so cool.
But there's lots of stuff that's in here, like this book's, what is it called? Notes on the Synthesis of Form. And it's got all these pictures of, what the hell is that? Like Ernest Haeckel type microorganisms and stuff like that.
That's so cool.
I want to know what's in this book, but I can't find it, so.
The other one, this one?
This one is like one of the single issues that they did. So this is this is 69. That big one came out in 72, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
And they were doing the big catalogs, and they were doing magazines, and they were doing like these tabloid newspaper type things.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So they were really cranking out a lot of printed ephemera.
Totally, yeah. And if you go on that website, Whole Earth Index, it's everything that you can see is like had existed before.
Very cool.
So
I love the title too. It's like they're really going for it with Whole Earth.
yeah.
It's like we were talking about just before you came, Jason Polan, who did Every Person in New York.
I love Jason Polan.
Yeah, same. And you know, we were saying like, what a great name for something, because it implies that someone would carry on that work.
Yeah.
Because you can't possibly ever finish it, right?
Exactly,
so like, and another thing that came up was his Taco Bell drawing club.
Yeah.
So he would just be like, all right, today, Taco Bell, let's go. And I heard him once say that, like, in a Taco Bell, everyone's the same. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. Exactly. We're all equal in a Taco Bell. And I was saying to Mike,
the most egalitarian of the fast food
franchise. And I was like, we should bring that back. We should get together and host Taco Bell Drawing Club in honor of Jason.
Do you have to buy something in Taco Bell to sit there and hang out?
I mean, I'll get 3 crunchy Taco Supremes every time with pleasure. And some Cine Twists.
Yeah.
I'm not even messing around. And then
we're going to bleep all that out.
Diet Baja Blast Mountain Dew. Just get blasted. You know they have hard Mountain Dew now?
No,
like alcoholic Mountain Dew. Yeah.
Hard to do.
That's so crazy. All these brands are making like spiked drinks.
Spiked everything.
Yeah. Like the spiked Minute Maid too. That's so weird.
We're so
Spike
weird.
it all, baby. Spikes.
We were up at the St. Lawrence River, like in between Canada and New York, and they had Orangina, but like alcoholic Orangina cider seltzer.
I mean,
rather.
What do they say? Like, if you can't make money selling alcohol, like you shouldn't be having a business or something like that. Like, so it sells itself.
Yeah, that's right.
That's so funny that you brought up Jason Polan. He was like one of the first artists that I looked at that like made me think like, oh, I can draw. Like I can learn how to draw.
Totally.
And
I
just
love that.
His Instagram is like one of my favorite things ever. Like when I was in school, I wrote an essay about how great his Instagram was.
That's amazing. I love that.
He seemed like no one has ever had a bad word to say about that guy.
Yeah.
He's like a lovely, inspirational artist.
And that's why I think like carrying on the work is a noble thing. It would be nice to get a zine together of a bunch of people drawing people in New York.
Inspired by that. That's
like
a good idea.
in honor of Jason, and just like continue that work. Because I don't know, it seems to me like you with a title like Every Person in New York, you really want this thing to live on.
Yeah, totally. And he's just he just seems like such a great person, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Really just cared about everybody and like cared about the things that he liked a lot, but is also open to seeing other things and seeing things that he didn't know about.
Yeah,
Just really
exploratory.
Cool. Yeah.
We try to bring that same spirit to the channel. Yeah, this is amazing. I
Yeah.
love this.
Oh yeah, this is the animals book.
Yeah. So Dover is a publisher that, from what I can tell, just does public domain work. Like they just reprint public domain stuff and they put it in this very nice.
If it works, right?
It's like a cheap paperback. Speaking of public domain, everything before 1924 is free to use, especially in America.
100 years.
Yeah, it's 100 years, and that's because of fucking
Copyright,
Disney.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this book is great. It's just like really good, crisp illustration too. Like you could scan this and put it in something, and nobody would know.
So you could make an entire T-shirt business on like 20 pages of this book.
Totally.
Definitely. I'd buy a t-shirt with a turtle on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just no text, just like a sick
Turtle.
illustration of
Hell
a
yeah.
gold gecko or something.
Giant ass head.
That thing's sweet, yeah.
This would be great for like, I like to do this
frog.
project with the
that
students. It's like a chimera project where we look at a bunch of animals and they have to combine them into a new creature or something like that.
That's
This would be
really
cool
cool.
for collaging stuff together.
Yeah, totally. And what's
I just
great
drew a
about
trout recently.
oh really?
Came out really nice. Yeah.
That's a great conversation starter. I just drew a trout recently.
It's very much like in the like something a kid would say.
Wait, what did you say?
I drew a
earlier?
fish today.
Oh, hey, Nick. How was your day? I drew a fish.
I drew a fish. Life rules.
What did you say earlier? I bowled for TGI Fridays.
I bowled for TGI Fridays. That's a real true fact. A fork fact.
True facts presented.
Yeah. A fun fork fact.
Love the
Oh, these
so
Beatles,
much.
yeah, these are
Oh,
sweet.
definitely.
And what's great about Dover is these books are cheap. You know, they print a shit ton of them and then they just shoot them out there. They're
That's
not
great.
paying for any of this illustration, so they can just make as many as they want.
Yeah.
It's true.
Do they are the artists mentioned?
I don't think so.
I mean, they're so similar. Like I stylistically, this book is really cohesive. I wonder
Yeah.
how many of these are drawn by the same handful of people.
Yeah. Probably have.
I mean, they're probably pulling plates from all over history, you know, so
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
gotta be.
engravings from forever ago.
And those were probably taught. You know, the engraving style of the time was very based on like referencing other versions of that thing. So I wonder if you just develop a naturalist style through
Yeah.
The whales
inertia
are
or
cool.
something. Whoa.
They are signed, some of them, so you can see that, but you know,
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
there's other books that do that.
You'd think
better,
if
but-
you were an engraver, you wouldn't go with a signature, like a scripty signature.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like big ass blocks.
Like forever.
I really want to take like an etching class or something.
Yeah.
It would be fun to do an etching.
I like the idea of going to like figure drawing or doing something where you just like
Sweet.
Yeah.
you just draw on the plate like a dry point or something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's very spontaneous. It's not this labored over thing. But
Right.
to make something like an etching, kind of reverse it where it is just like whatever goes down goes down.
Well, that's the thing with etching a lot too, because a lot of these started out as drawings, and then they would have an etcher finish the drawing,
Oh.
or the artist would do the etching themselves.
Interesting. Oh man, this is a shirt right here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Print,
that
screen
rules.
print that shit and make $1 million.
And then put something really really kind and generative text wise around it. Like I only know how to show up authentically. Like that kind of thing.
Don't talk to me till I have my coffee.
There you go. Yeah. I love Mondays.
I think another
sick.
thing that's still happening with this is these DK eyewitness books.
Yeah, we have some of these in our
DK,
school
yeah.
library. Those are
I
sweet.
love these books so much.
Yeah, those are awesome.
There's like the skinny ones like this, and then there's like the fat ones that are like that big, and it's like the visual dictionary or whatever. It's just, I love these.
They've put out, since they were using this style, they've changed their presentation now.
Oh, yeah.
So the DK books now have a kind of like almost fairy tale quality to them.
Oh.
I got one from my niece. It was like minerals. It was all rocks, you know. And
Yeah.
then they do another one. It's like all whatever. So, I mean, there's so many of them.
Totally. And this is probably like 1/2 or something of the amount that they've actually done in this format.
They license so much material.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I
And
love...
these are photos though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of these were, I think before probably 2010 or something like that, there was no 3D illustration put in here at all. But some of the more recent ones I've seen, they've still have photography and they still have models. But well, actually they have less models and more photography and more 3D. But I just think the hand-built models are like the coolest thing ever. And
I love it,
when
yeah.
I was a kid, that was like something I would be drawn to immediately.
It's kind of like when you go to the Natural History
Oh
Museum.
yeah, I was just
Yeah,
thinking the same
exactly.
thing.
Yeah.
There's something really beautiful about
That's
this, like,
It's a great
you
spoon.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
what, like, Wes Anderson basically took the Natural History Museum and made it his aesthetic.
And made it suck.
He's like, no, he's like, he made that his movie style aesthetic. He was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna make all my sets and like diagrams
It's
like
like
this.
hermetically. Yeah, I was just at the Natural History Museum. I was really struck by those things again, because it's almost like better than being in real life.
Yeah.
In some ways, because it's like you could never get 5 feet away from a jaguar about to
Right.
take down a gazelle or something like that. But here's this frozen moment that's like meticulously assembled to be as realistic as possible. Like you feel like you're in a place you could never actually be.
Yeah.
In real life, it's
love
really
that.
transportative.
I love that part of the museum. It's like walking into a storybook or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's so beautiful, and it is.
Totally.
They are very, you know, they are full of story.
Yeah, and similar to these kind
Yeah.
of like.
This
They're,
is
like beautiful
awesome.
naturalist sculptures. Yeah,
It's just a
That's
great
so
model
cool.
too. And you can see that it's like emulating natural world, but also you can see like, oh, there's just a pane of glass right here.
Mhm.
And then this is what, like resin or something, you know?
Probably resin. Yeah.
It's cool to like break it down like that and see that you can recreate the natural world, but you can't like make something that's, oh, this is like nature.
Right.
You know? One of my favorite things about the Natural History Museum is that giant ass whale is probably one of my favorite works of art ever. I
Yeah.
just love that thing so much.
That's
and you can
amazing.
walk all the way around it too.
Totally. You can lay down under it.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like what other work of art can you have that similar experience with?
Yeah.
It's so cool too to see kids discover it for the first time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like watching a kid interact with something like that, it makes you. It's like life affirming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went with our she's 3, I think, 3-year-old niece just a couple
So
weeks
fun.
ago, and it was that experience. Like
I
you could
love it.
watch her face just like explode.
I mean, think of how the majesty of a museum like that and the scale when you're small, unbelievable.
Yeah. And one of the great things about the Natural History Museum is that they have a great like digital archive. So if you want to look up how like some of those things were made,
Oh,
you
cool.
can find it on their
That's-
website.
I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is rad.
And just look at the people like they're making a fucking bug that's like 4 feet long or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what a cool job.
Yeah,
So
for real.
And I really like in the Natural History Museum the part where it's like northeast coast or something like that, where it's talking about like American forests and the giant. That's the one where the giant bug is and the giant mosquito and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And that they haven't updated that part of the museum since like the 40s or the 50s maybe. So all of the hand painted like graphs are still on the wall.
Oh,
very
cool.
The typography that's so 60s is still in there. It's
We
just
should
great.
just go from here to the Natural History.
Yeah.
Yeah, they update the dinosaur thing like every 20 years, but
Yeah.
then they leave everything else alone.
Yeah. They updated the gem room too.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I haven't. Maybe I have seen.
I think
it.
you have to get a separate ticket for that. Or
I
separate
love
ticket
the
for
old
that.
one though because it was
Yeah.
so like shabby and amazing. Like it definitely had like late '60s
Yes.
vibe. Like everything was velvet.
Which felt extra magical to me. I mean,
Yeah,
the one in DC was
I
the
agree.
same way. Like I grew up going to the DC Natural History Museum, and it was like walking into like a sword and sorcery movie. Like everything is like plush.
That's so
and
cool.
like neon lit and stuff.
I
It was
love
like
that.
it looked like the way these magical things looked in films.
I love
and now
that.
I think it's more austere. It's more minimalist.
We should hit up some museums next week when we're in town for SPX.
If we have time, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
great.
fun.
It's not super close by, but yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you never know.
So here's a book I really like. It's called Pre-Columbian Art in New York, Selections from Private Collections, and it's the Museum of Primitive Art. I don't know
Oh,
what that
very
is.
cool.
I
Yeah,
think
I've
that's,
never heard of the Museum of Primitive Art.
but I really like this book because it can't really see it on the camera, but it's on like this nice orange, like tan color, and then it's laid out like that.
Vibe.
But then they tip in the illustrations of all the
Oh,
works
nice.
in the middle right
Beautiful.
here.
The contrast is great.
Yeah, it's just like a really nice object of a book. I
The
don't
brown
know.
and orange work really well too.
Mhm, totally.
Yeah, this is fantastic. It's really fun to look at these books and kind of see them through your eyes too.
Uh-huh.
Like it makes it so much more special to be like taken through this collection of books. It's really
Yeah.
lovely.
Mm-hmm. And you can really feel I was looking at Clamp 2, I think last night. Like there's one mini comic that's like stapled in here.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I just like it has these kind of discovery feelings of like you open it and you're not quite sure like what the next thing is gonna be.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like this one, I love that this here is like it's
yeah.
clearly it's like we have this mini piece. How are we gonna get this in here? And it's like a trimmed piece of a cover kind of that's been like stapled on,
So
but
cool.
it comes through on like the other side, which has another comic attached to it. It's just like it just makes this, like you said, kind of an object.
Yeah, I just like
Feel to
reusing the things and not trying to be super wasteful. You know, like making books is a wasteful practice in general. There's only so much I can do about that, but inserting things, and I think it adds to the person's experience.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels, I like that like it's handmade, it's intentional. It's not just like you press print and there it goes.
Yeah.
That stuff is fine too, but there's an extra level of like craftsmanship to these objects. I think.
Yeah.
So
And
it
that's-
feels really considered.
When I was only making 300 of clamp, that's something that I would sort of sacrifice my life for. But when I'm making 1,000 copies of a book, it's it's when
Much
does
different.
the labor outweigh the actual object of the book? You know?
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, that's actually a great question because like it is the more handmade attention you put to a book and to an object, the fewer people will actually see it.
Yeah.
The fewer people like there's a consideration of audience and reach, I guess.
Mhm.
Like how do you decide like how many of something you want to make? Is it like I want everyone to see this work, or is like I want the work to be featured as amazingly as possible? Like that's a tricky balance, I imagine.
Yeah, that's the balance that I'm trying to get. And when I first started Clamp, I always wanted it to be something that almost anybody can buy. You know, you see it in a store and you want it, it's like you can get it. You know, it's not going to be something that's $40 or it's
Right.
going to be something that's $30. And that's like, people do that and that's great. You know, they want to make physical works of art that are a book. And I like doing that too, but I also want it to be something that can be passed around and something that's not super precious, which is, you know, that's that hard balance. you know?
Especially now as like costs rise and like logistics and just the cost of living has gone up so much since the pandemic. It's like paper costs more money. Like I went and got a new hardcover book because my partner's birthday is coming up, right? So like it's 1996, I like walked into Barnes and Nobles and bought a book.
You can go to the Strand, bro.
I know. But I was just there. It was, you know, whatever. It was there. And every time I walk into one of those stores, it does feel like I'm going back in time. But I buy a brand new book and it was $37 for like a novel, just a regular size novel length book. And I was like, if this wasn't her birthday, I would never do that.
Yeah.
Like I never buy brand new books. I'm always on the hunt.
It's a niche product now. It's like like how the farmer's market used to be like the people's way to get produce, but now it's like a fancy person's way of pretending that they're living on a farm or something.
Yeah, right. Totally.
It's not a proletariat thing anymore. It's a niche product.
I mean, the book though, the whole point of a book, the format, is so that everyone can get one.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's still true. Like, new books are now a niche product because people don't read new books
Totally.
anymore. It's like a switch in the distribution model. Or something.
Totally.
I think like the used book is one of the most egalitarian things in terms of just general commerce right now. Like there's no real, like unless you're talking about a recycling store like Big Reuse or something like that, like there's no analogous to a whole network of used things that people are trading with each other and selling for a lot cheaper than they bought it.
Yeah, but we have an
That's
amazing
true.
Goodwill in our neighborhood that just closed, which I think is like a real shame. And if I was the mayor, there would be city funded secondhand stores every 5 blocks.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
There's so much shit.
There's so much
and there's
stuff.
so much stuff. Like just an open kind of trading market to share.
Totally.
Like why are we still buying new stuff?
Yeah,
We don't need
right.
it. We don't-
Totally.
Unless it's broken, you don't need a new thing.
I couldn't agree more. You know, and shouts to Big Reuse, by the way. It was Floyd Tangeman that turned me onto that place. And it turns out it's not far from here. It's like a block.
Yeah,
it's like 2 blocks away.
What is Big Reuse?
It's a secondhand store, but they have everything, right? Exactly what you're talking about. But Floyd put me onto it. And then it turns out I would go much later. I would end up at the gym right next door. That's where I work out. So I go there every day. And like that walk from here down Smith 9th Street over the Gowanus Canal and around through the Lowe's parking lot around the corner. It's wild. Like
Big Reuse, is it like green on the outside?
Yeah,
It's like,
it has-
okay,
yeah.
I've been there before.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have like when a school closes, they'll go get all the desks. And
they get
stuff
everything.
Like that.
Yeah,
I have been there before.
I go there and I grab comics all the time.
Yeah,
It's
they have a great book section too. Like,
Totally.
and one thing I was talking with Mikhail a long time ago, and he was saying that I was like, oh yeah, the cheapest book on the second floor at Strand is $10, and he was like, that's fucking crazy. Like that's the most expensive book at Big Reuse.
Right?
It's $10.
Totally. And usually when I'm checking out, like the guy, whoever's working there, a hardcover is supposed to be $3.99 or $5.99. But a comic is only 99 cents. So sometimes they'll look at it and they'll go, oh, this is comics.
Comic book.
$1. So I'll get a bunch of hardcover comics or graphic novels or whatever. And it's like, I'll get 10 for 10. And I walk out like, like, so I'm just so happy. I'm like, I'm a little kid.
And I think also like shouts out to anyone out there who's running or has set up one of those little free libraries, because those are becoming more and more present too.
Yeah.
We have a couple that I pass on the way to school that I drop stuff at all the time. And anytime I drop books off at a free library, they're gone by the afternoon or the next day. Like people, there's engagement with this stuff. It's just because there's no profit to be made from it. There's no investment in the time to create that infrastructure.
And they're all like, one person made that. Like they were like, oh, let's make a free library, and then they just built a box.
It's like a birdhouse.
Yeah, totally. It's a birdhouse. Yeah,
and people smash them from time to time, or maybe they break them by accident, and then within a few days, the plexiglass is back. Like it's like someone's maintaining this. Some mysterious hero is building these things and maintaining them, and like just like that's the greatest. That should be all over the place.
Well, that's why it's great to have things that aren't paid for by outside entities. If you built it, you're going to care about it.
Yeah.
And you don't care if it gets broken. Things get broken when they're outside. That's nobody's fault.
Yeah, totally. It's life affirming in the way that it gives me hope for the future.
It's beautiful.
This idea that, like, as our consciousness expands, we can let go of the idea of property, like personal property.
And, any old Joe Schmo can, like, pick up a Nick Darnasso book, read it, and immediately put it back in the free library.
Yeah, exactly. Or just leave it on the screen. Pew, pew, pew.
Yes, I'm all for books out in the world and where people can grab them and put them, like, leave one, take a penny, leave a penny kind of vibe. I like that phrase that is like the open air markets where they leave the books out and they say like, well, a thief doesn't read and a reader doesn't steal. So you don't have to lock up these books.
That's nice.
And it's like, that is a great sentiment.
Yeah. And they're like during Occupy Wall Street and during 2020, there were a lot of free libraries cropping up in some of these like encampments and places. Like that's always like a primary central focal point for these things. That's like distribution of information for free.
Yeah.
And if the AI model uses all the electricity up and there's no more electricity, you'll see the power return to the printing press pretty quickly. Yeah.
And I think that's why things like the Whole Earth Catalog and Internet Archive and Wikipedia are so important, because they're free sources of information that anybody can go to.